What's going on, everybody? We're running a little bit late here today at the AlwaysOn studio. Got a little bit new equipment, so that's why we were waiting for the old USPS to actually get their button gear and deliver what I wanted so I can have the best sound possible. Especially as we're going to transition this thing probably next week to have an audio platform as well on, the Spotifys, the iTunes, the SoundClouds of the world. So we're going to be transitioning that just so everything can be up to snuff. So that's the reason for the delay. That's why it's going to be late here on a Wednesday. We're going to go back to back recording. So this one's going to be a little bit shorter of an episode. It's going to be touching just a handful of topics so we can test out how the audio is doing, test out how, everything's keeping its pace. So wanted to get something out there. The big thing I really wanted to talk about was the Ja Morant controversy. I also want to touch a little bit on the Kendrick Perkins, JJ Redick thing that's happening on ESPN First Take. I think that's a little bit of an interesting conversation there. Also want to talk about John Jones, who's the greatest of all time. We have the Players Championship coming up this weekend on NBC and also Golf Channel. Then we have Tennessee becoming the first state to ban drag shows in public, amongst a couple other things. And then lastly, I just want to finish it off where Walmart is closing their 2 remaining stores in Portland. So that said, let's jump right into it here. Let's go straight. What I really want to talk about is the Portland closing. Let's do that. Walmart is closing its 2 remaining stores in the Portland area. Apparently shoplifting, which apparently is kind of a strong word. I think we all knew that shoplifting was an issue over there in old Portlandia. But they've been facing a crisis since, I believe, the pandemic, really. But Walmart announced that as of this month, on the 24th, they're going to be closing their 2 locations at Walmart. That's 600 jobs that are now no longer there. It's obviously going to create an even bigger food desert for the people living in that area. As they note in some of the articles that are going around on the internet, it's in low-income areas. Typically, that's where Walmarts are in more low-income areas. So robberies and thefts have just been a huge thing. There were videos going around of people just brazenly taking TVs from the tech section and then just opening up the box, putting it in their car, and deucing. This is what you get. Theft, as they say, is a tax on the poor. That's what, and the disenfranchised. That's what it is. The Walmart CEO said himself that due to shrink, as they call it, which is essentially just theft or any sort of fraud that's happening within the store, they mark it off as shrink, so it's just a loss to the company. Due to this, you either are going to have to pay higher prices or a reduction in the locations that Walmart serves because of these types of issues. You can't be having day in, day out, probably thousands, tens of thousands of dollars worth of product being stolen or fraudulently sold. That's just something that's unacceptable to any major business, whether you're Walmart or not. I feel like the argument of whether it be my generation, the millennials, or what do they call them? I think maybe the Zoomer generation, but the one right below me. One day I'll have to talk about how I hate that distinction by generation of generation. It's so stupid that it's so malleable, it's so, amorphous. But either way, that generation, I get it. You're younger. You're in your 20s, right? If even that. You typically think that, what insurance is going to pay for it. But yeah, the more, that's like saying, hey, I get in a wreck, insurance is going to pay for it. But you know what? The more wrecks you keep getting into, the insurance is going to factor that into your risk of insuring you. They ain't going to lose any money. So what they're going to do is jack up your insurance rate, your policy premiums. Same thing they would do for any sort of retailer like Walmart. And Walmart can't just eat it. They're a business. They're trying to make money. So it's the unfortunate circumstances that happen when people are obviously selfishly driven. They see themselves more than likely probably as a victim, think that they can get off on big bad Walmart, even though Walmart is providing a lot of services, whether it be, food, tech stuff, or anything you need around the house, appliances even potentially. car service, pharmaceutical stuff. So these might be some of the only, bastions in the area that are actually willing to have a footprint in poor areas and accommodate these people who are underserved more times than not. But what kills these people and why it is a tax on the poor, theft, is Walmart's just going to leave. They're going to close up shop. I think they were saying these 2 Walmarts that are closing, the nearest ones within whether the employees that work there or just the residents that reside around that area, is I'm pretty sure the closest one was 5 miles. The next closest was somewhere between 8 and 13 miles. So, in some distances walkable, not a comfortable walk, but it's now taking you way out of the just normal trajectory of your day. Not stuff that you want to necessarily see. I just see this stuff. It bothers me. I've never been to Portland. I've been out west, but I've never been to Portland particularly. I've heard the state of Oregon is unbelievably beautiful. At one point, especially in the early 2000s, Portland was on the rise, man. Portland was on the rise, and now it's just seemed to be devastated by whether it be the poor, the homeless situation that they got going on there, the just ultra extreme democratic or progressive policies that have seemed to make it an armpit of the Northwest. Seattle may be, shortly behind them. So thought that was an interesting article. It's just something that needs to be figured out. Hopefully the community leaders can come together and see that, whether it be defund the police or allowing all these homeless encampments going on, our policies are directly contributing to companies moving out of the area. And if Walmart is doing it, it's bad. You truly just know it's bad and something needs to be done, because Walmart is one of the biggest companies. It's the largest employer in the U.S. Like I said, 600 people now who need those jobs more than likely. They are lower income. Walmart now don't have them. So, by having just these grandiose schemes of anti-capitalism, Antifa, yada, 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 all the craziness that happens over there in the Northwest, where's it getting you now? It's getting you a Walmart is now leaving. So let's transition, though, real quick into sports and get into the Ja Morant controversy that's going on. For those of you that may or may not know, Ja Morant, I believe it was this... it occurred after the Grizzlies lost. It was I think that Sunday morning. What would that be? Today is the 8th. So this story is a little bit old now. But it would have been Friday the 5th, if I'm not mistaken, of this month at 5:19 a.m. after the Grizzlies lost to the Nuggets. Grizzlies obviously in Memphis, the team he plays for. Nuggets over there in Colorado. Denver. Apparently, Mr. Morant went to a club, opened up his Instagram Live at 5 in the morning, and flashed a gun. This, to me, it's not a huge issue in the sense that having a gun on his person doesn't bother me. In my opinion, he has every right to do it. And, it's American. He can, as long as he's doing it in a responsible manner, not threatening anybody, every right to carry a weapon on his person by my likes. I get it. He's a big, famous guy. He wants to make sure he can protect himself and protect his future career. So in that sense, it's totally understandable. What's irresponsible is what he decided to do by going on Instagram Live. Again, this is 5, 6 in the morning. He's probably a little inebriated and foolishly decides to flash a gun on an Instagram Live. Now, that, I think in and of itself, it had caused him to delete his social media accounts, caused him to miss a couple of games with the Grizzlies. I'm assuming he's just doing some deep reflection. But the biggest issue that's coming up out of this is that how did he get that gun there? Because let's remember, this was a game in Denver. This team came from Memphis, so you would only assume, unless someone's giving him a rent-a-gun in Denver, he carried his own personal gun on the team plane and traveled with that weapon in his possession. More times than not, just off the surface, you may not think that's some huge deal. To me, realistically, I don't find it a massive deal, but the NBA has very strict policies. I'm assuming this is post, Gunnar Gilbert going out but did he Did he shoot himself, or was that Kevin Durant? Kevin Garnett. One of these NBA players, Gilbert Arenas, had guns in the locker room. I know that for a fact. And I believe Kevin Garnett shot himself. There's probably been a couple of NBA players that have shot themselves by accident, let's be honest. I could be thinking, though, and confusing this with Plaxico Burress and the Giants. So, weapons galore when it comes to our pro sports leagues around here. But either way, the big thing that concerns Ja Morant is that if you do carry a weapon onto the team planes, that carries an automatic 50-game suspension. That's the rest of the year for homeboy, and he is the centerpiece of that team. As the onions being peeled back even more, a couple of players had a players-only meeting before this incident occurred after the Nuggets lost, where the players came together. Oh, I forget the guy's name, the center for the Grizzlies, but Adams is his name, but I forget his first name. Center for the Grizzlies. Oh, come on, he's an Australian guy. Steven Adams. Apparently, Steven Adams basically led a team-only meeting that said, hey, guys, let's be smart about how we operate here in Denver. Apparently, there's been some scandals. The NBA is always full of drama. So apparently, there have been some scandals in the recent past. Ja Morant is a huge wannabe gangster. Homeboy went to a private school, raised by both his father and mother. He is the biggest wannabe gangster in the world. Barstool has a fantastic clip where it's basically overlaying some of the pictures of Ja Morant throughout his life, and then the Eminem song from 8 Mile where, what is it? I can't play it here because you guys won't be able to see it. We're trying to do a little bit of change up. We're getting technology. We're easing into a little more technology, whether it be the microphone here with the beautiful stand. We're also shooting in 4K. I got headphones on for the first time. They look a little bit awkward, but I don't care. So I'm not able to do the screen share like we used to do with the Google Docs. We're going to figure that out. I just haven't had the time. Unfortunately, I do work for a living. This is not my primary job as much as I want to make it. But he's just a wannabe gangster. He's a clout chaser, right? What I hate to see is just someone who's a role model for just the city, the fans. I guess for the city, he's living up to what Memphis has a reputation for. But just to be a better role model for the people that really do idolize him and look up to him, more than likely a bunch of young boys. I just think you have a responsibility, even as much as you don't potentially want to have it, and as much as it is a burden. Trust me, I get it. That's not an easy weight to carry, all that responsibility on your shoulders, but you do have to be conscious of it. And he, as of this point in his NBA career, has not been very wise. Heck of a player, heck of a talent from what I've been able to see. The dude can jump through an arena. He's got bounce that very few people have the ability to say they possess. So the sky's the limit for his career, but he could have had a stupid little roadblock here due to just issues off the court. And those are the things you can limit. You can't limit, or you can't account necessarily for tearing your ACL or your MCL, PCL, some sort of injury that's out of the blue. But off the court, you have essentially all the control in the world over your off-the-court actions. And to not be cognizant of that, to not be aware, and to just be dumb, to be, he's not an old guy. I think he's maybe 22, right? I mean, let's see here. Ja Morant, he is a young dude. Ja Morant, NBA basketball player or American basketball player. Yeah, he's 23 years old, so his brain isn't even fully developed. However, you have to know that when you're in the stature that he is at, you just got to be a little bit better. So that being said, though, we'll see what happens. It looks like a 50-game suspension may be in his future. On the same subject as the NBA, we're going to keep carrying on because the NBA does not get and will not be much discussed on the Always On podcast. But I think there was another interesting thing with J.J. Redick and Perkins, Kendrick Perkins, the former Celtics player. J.J. Redick, I guess most famously with Orlando, he was sort of a journeyman. Both of them at times were journeymen. But they were on First Take. Essentially, Perkins implied that Jokic, I believe he's a power forward over in the Nuggets, speaking of the devil. Right, let me see. Gosh, this is how little my NBA knowledge is. Jokic, Serbian, Jokic, basketball. Hopefully this is it. Yes, okay, good. I was right. He's with the Nuggets. Kendrick Perkins, who is a black man, was saying that Jokic would not be essentially in the MVP conversation if he were not black. Do I know the man's stats? No, but I know that he is averaging a triple-double this year. And J.J. Redick, I think rightfully so, just from looking at this as a 30,000-foot view, essentially was saying that you're implying that the white voters are racist because they're taking into account his skin color versus his actual play on the basketball court, which, okay, let's just grant Perkins. Maybe there is one or two guys doing that, but that ain't everybody. And it came out later that it looks like the actual voters, they're not all white men. It's actually a pretty diverse cast of characters that are voting on the NBA MVP. So it's a little ridiculous. Obviously, just goes to show that ESPN has really just been in the muck on the race stuff. Way too much. I don't watch SportsCenter anymore. Avid SportsCenter watcher. Love ESPN back in the olden days. It was realistically probably for me around 2012, maybe let's say 2013 or 2014, where they just started wading into those waters of mixing sports and politics, and that's something that I don't like to see. And that's just, I guess, a quick sidebar. That's something we're going to change here on this show, is while I do talk sports and I do talk politics, I try to keep a distinct line between those two realms and not blend them. That's why I don't really want to talk gun policy with Ja Morant. I just think it's more interesting. I think it's something you should have the right to do. But let's go by the story itself and what the consequences with the NBA could be. Clearly, there's no macro stuff there. But what I would like to do, and what we're going to do, as I just get more used to the new technological situation we got going on, is we're going to start breaking things out. We're going to have, always on sports, always on news, always on culture, where we sort of just divvy up in tech. I want to get into tech too, to where we can divvy up everything so you know exactly what you're getting each episode. They're all going to be their own individual episodes. We're going to have playlists. We're also going to, when we get to the audio side as a podcast, that sort of stuff will be there as it is. But you'll see that coming in the next few weeks as I sort out myself, because now that I'm a lone ranger here, we'll see how that stuff sorts out. So irregardless, pivoting back to the sports world, last thing I want to talk about here is two things. One, we have Jon Jones. He's the greatest fighter ever. It's something I'm only going to lightly touch on because I might go longer on this than the fight was itself, because on Saturday night, Jon Jones absolutely demolished Cyril Gane to win the heavyweight championship in the UFC. So he's now won the light heavyweight and the heavyweight. Jon Jones has. Pretty sure he is 24-1-0. Homeboy is unreal. Greco-Roman is his main style. Hell of a grappler. That's what he did. He choked out Cyril Gane with 2 minutes within 2 minutes into the fight. He's now 27-1-0 overall. His next match is potentially going to be Stipe Miocic, who is considered to be the best overall heavyweight of all time when it comes to the MMA or UFC. Should be a hell of a fight, man. Really should be. I am excited to see what that, or if that comes down the pike and what it could bring. I may be tempted to actually order the fight. So I just wanted to touch on Jon Jones right there. I also wanted to touch on the Players' Championship happening this week. Cam Young, the winner of the last year's Players, isn't going to be here due to the Live Golf Tournament. This is a PGA event. This is essentially the championship of the PGA besides the FedEx Cup stuff. Besides any major, most people consider it the biggest tournament outside of that. Held in Jacksonville, Florida at TPC Sawgrass. Unbelievably beautiful golf course. Has that famous island hole for the par 3 on 17. It should be a heck of an event. Excited for it. It starts, this is Wednesday. This is actually going to be dropped Wednesday. It's going to be starting tomorrow. So turn yourselves into Golf Channel or NBC and watch yourself that event. It's going to be really, really good. Who is going to be the winner? We got a huge field, obviously. Is it Rahm, Rory, Thomas, Zolataris, Schauffele, Homa, Hovland, Spieth, Morikawa? A lot of players that are playing at a very good level. If I had to peg it, Spieth had a good week last week. I would love to see him, Rahm, Thomas, or Scheffler come out. Rory closed very well on that Sunday in Bay Hill last week. So we'll see where he goes with that. I guess what I'm really going to round it off are two things here. Tennessee became the first state to ban drag shows on public property and around schools. So we're now pivoting, obviously, to U.S. news here. This is not a sport. I guess some people look at politics as their sport. I try not to. I try to take a serious eye to it when I can. It was signed in by Governor Bill Lee on Thursday, the 2nd of this month. The law will take effect on July 1st of this year. First-time violators of this law will be fined $2,500 and potentially face a year in prison. Any subsequent violations is going to be considered a felony, and I'm assuming carry much longer prison sentences than the 1 year. Several other states are looking into this. It said here, Idaho, Kentucky, North Dakota, Montana, Oklahoma, Utah, are all considering similar bans. Arkansas also recently signed in a bill that puts new restrictions on adult-oriented performances, which, I'm sorry, that's what these are. Don't really care. I mean, I have a bunch of thoughts on the trans stuff, but these drag shows are 100% adult-oriented performances, and kids should be nowhere near them. Nowhere near them. This is essentially saying, let's have a Chippendale show, or for better yet, let's take children to just a strip show, or a cabaret. You know, how would we feel about taking kids to go to a gentleman's club and just, topless, or not topless, just top on, and see how that goes? How it's any different, just on principle, is beyond me. I think we've all seen how the performers in these child-oriented drag shows dress themselves up. It's perverted. It really is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's just perverted. And for you to force that upon your kids, especially at such a young age, to be real honest, just shame on you. Shame on you. I don't care how progressive your politics are. You should not be pushing children into overtly sexually charged shows like that at any age, really. I mean, maybe once you start getting into that mid-teen age, right? 14, 15, 16, then you get a little bit different story. Even then, though, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little more bashful person when it comes to that sort of stuff, but I think this is a good move by the legislature. They also, in that same bill, bar healthcare providers from prescribing puberty blockers, hormones, and gender transition surgeries to minors. I think that's even more appropriate. Again, once you become an adult at 18 years old, I have no problem, absolutely no problem with you doing what you want with your body. But until then, I do not think someone should be permanently changing and altering their chemistry and or their actual just physiology and physical appendages to suit whatever whim they have as a 14 or 15-year-old, potentially even younger. It just makes no sense to me. I remember some of the best advice I ever got from a teacher in high school. Maybe it's because I'm a little anti-tattoo overall. Get one if you want it, whatever. Chop your dick off if you want it, whatever. But the best advice I remember a teacher giving me was wait until you're 25 to get your first tattoo. If you want it by then, you know it's going to have at least some sort of meaning to you. Your brain's, I think he said 25, excuse me. I don't know if I made that clear. I might have said 22. He said wait till you're 25 because then your brain's fully developed. You know that this has either some sort of symbolism or meaning to you to where it's actually important in your life. I abided by that rule because I always thought it was just genuinely smart. Shout out Coach Phelan. And I think people need to do that as well for gender transition at minimum 18 years old. I mean, good Lord, you can't drink a beer, smoke a cigarette, or even kill anybody. We don't even let you drive until you're 16. I mean, you can go into the Army at 18, but yet we'll let you chop your dick off and put fake boobs on yourself, close up your vagina, I guess. I don't know how that piece works. Under the age of 18. I mean, I don't know. It's a weird world we're starting to travel in, and I think that this is a beacon of sanity. I'm not sure what Florida has on the books, my home state, but I think something similar to this effect would be very much appropriate because I am not certain what positive this is. I mean, this is too inclusive. This is about as inclusive as let's just let murderers walk the streets. Let's just let pedophiles, prey on children. That's how I see this when you're talking about minors. Once you're an adult, do what you want, okay? I may not like it, but I have no right to tell you what you should and shouldn't do, okay? If you want to do all those sorts of things, be a man that thinks he's a woman, if you were to ask me my opinion, I would say, hey, you should probably go see a doctor who's not bought and paid for into these sorts of ideologies and just speak to him because you may just be confused. You may just have a little bit of a imbalance going on because that happens, right? People do get depressed. People do have, gender dysphoria. So I just think we have to be careful in this realm because that's just where we're at right now is we're just arrogantly walking off a cliff, it seems like, and people are going to get hurt. That's what I just don't like is there are going to be a ton of stories in the decade to come of kids who are 14, 15, and we're going to see this out west, no doubt, who are 14 or 15, got irreversible sex changes or took hormones and puberty blockers that are now not the persons that they would have developed into and are going to be even in an even worse state than they would be previously. So these are the types of things that I think Tennessee, kudos to them. Kudos to them. I don't think that these sorts of how this even became a cultural touchstone to me is it is hard to comprehend how it even became as much of a divisive topic as it has become. I think it's probably just a point of polarization in this country. We'll see how those plosives do there, but since we're just so seemingly getting hotly divided on cultural topics, that each side puts their stake into the ground and they are going to die on that hill where, to me, if you just look at this as objectively as possible, just as clear-eyed as possible, I mean, again, I will happily critique conservatives. Give me Trump conservatives, I will critique them to the day is long. You want to talk about January 6th and what Tucker Carlson's doing? That dude's a jackass, right? So I just think that this is one of those areas where it is just mind-boggling the way that we are just charging headlong into these issues, especially if you're on the progressive left. And I don't understand how parents and people who purport to be the moral arbiters for the country think this is right or good in any way. So in my opinion, kudos to Tennessee in that regard. Now let's leave the podcast here on one more not so good note. China's foreign minister, let's just pivot out to more global news. China's foreign minister Qin Gang warns of the U.S.-Chinese relationship potentially going off the rails. He sort of is parroting what Xi Jinping, who made remarks at essentially, I'm going to say, the CCP's congressional meetings I mean, I guess they call themselves a Congress. They're not elected by anybody. You don't necessarily have to be elected to be a congressional body. But there are meetings that were happening. He made remarks about Washington, basically, essentially trying to contain, encircle, and suppress the strategy of China. The strategy of China, obviously, incorporate Taiwan, project more regional power, and I think keep on their way of stealing our technology and doing all those sorts of things. It's something that we have to be cognizant of. But I think China, are they bluffing? Are they not? These are the types of things where I think we're going to be entering the realm of great power politics once again. We've been sort of in a lull after the Soviet Union fell in the 90s. We've sort of had 30 years here where the United States has been the preeminent power in the world. China's obviously grown exponentially economically. But when it comes to pure military prowess, it's been the U.S. of A. No doubt about it. But China is trying to catch up, and if they have their way, they would love to surpass us, okay? We still have plenty of advantages, but we need to get a little more clear-eyed about the realities of the world that surround us. I think it is a good thing that the Democrats have been very cognizant of what's going on in Ukraine. It seems like they are clear-headed about what those dangers are. Again, it's a part of the politics that we have today of just pure craziness and partisanship, that the Republicans, just because the Democrats think that's a good thing and Biden's the president, well, we're going to put our stake in the ground over here, and we're never going to, Ukraine stealing our money. That is a debate we can have, right? How much money we're giving to the Ukrainians, how it's being accounted for, all that stuff. But at the face of it, our backing of Ukraine is 100% necessary. You know, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world, he's a jackass when it comes to foreign policy. I think he's a very interesting thinker. Love to read his stuff. The Intercept, when it was first started, and his work on Edward Snowden, all well and good. But the cynicism that creeps into his type of thinking leads to the destruction and the rise of populist parties and just presence within countries that destroy them. There's just no doubt about it. When you have no optimism of your country, when you are just an utter cynic of what is going on, your country will fall. I mean, just the best example is always Rome. Okay, what was Caesar? What party was Caesar with? The populares, right? They were the populists. The only reason they had room to grow is because the equestrian class wasn't doing their fair share to, give the Roman people what they needed. So eventually it broke. You can look at other revolutions around the world too, where again, if you're a little too rigid from embracing certain progressive changes, I don't know if progressive is the right word, but certain dynamic changes, you're going to succumb to the people eventually. And sometimes those people are like dictators. Okay. Germany, the Nazis, you could arguably say were due to a populist rise in the country as well. More nationalistic, but nationalism can hide under the guise of populism. So that being said, though, pivoting back to China here, we got concerns with China. We really do. They don't abide by the same human rights guidelines. I mean, we're all caught up in drag shows while they're forcibly neutering women who are Muslim and putting them into concentration camps. They are, essentially locking their people for months and years on end in certain segments that have COVID outbreaks in the hopes that it prevents COVID, where we sure as heck know it's not. They actually caused, whether it be from natural jumping or just a lab-created incident, they actually caused the disease to spread out because they didn't care about what it did to their people and didn't necessarily have the forethought to see what it would do to others around the world and bring the whole economy to a screeching halt. So they are definitely a huge geostrategic competitor, and I think we do need to contain, encircle, and suppress China. I think we 100% do. Will that lead us to the brink of confrontation? I don't know. I don't want that to be the case. I don't want a full-blown war with China, but we may unfortunately, have that in the sights, irregardless of what we do. Otherwise, how much are you going to give? Okay? How much are you going to let them take? Just like we can go back to World War II. How much do you let someone take before you finally have the backbone to stand up to them? And what's that cost to you? For us right now, the most glaring one is Taiwan. What do? If they take Taiwan, that's all the major chips in the world. They now have the processes. For the most part, you would only assume there'd be sabotage on the Taiwanese part to, dismantle as much of that as they could. But now they have access to the most advanced chips in the world, giving them something they have long sought for. And we have potentially, if we do nothing when it comes to the defense of that island, we now have put China, the Philippines, and India in a tight spot, South Korea as well, as how do we keep our word? And if we don't have allies in the Pacific like that, who are they going to turn to if China's the only one there? They're either going to acquiesce to China. Japan may rearm. I don't know if we really want that. Japan to go full military again, because we all know how that turned out for the world. So Americans have hard choices, and we seem a little bit rudderless. Those are the things we want to discuss here on the Always On news, markets, and politics section of the show. These are things I think we need to ponder, okay? We need to parse out and look through these issues just to see where we're at, because having some sort of structure to the obviously future we want to see for not just our country but the world, it is important. Just aimlessly wandering around in our own issues, navel gazing down at our own problems all the time and thinking we're the worst, when really we're the best. We're right there amongst the best. If there's any country or two that we could deem better than us, it's debatable, at least. So I want to end the podcast there. I want to be able to get this out in a timely manner. Thank you guys for liking, subscribing, and watching. We're going to see these changes come to where we break everything out a little bit more. So you're going to get a sports episode. You're going to get a politics, news, and markets episode. You're going to get either tech or culture or something of the like. Hopefully, quality of video gets better, editing gets better, and we're going to all be along for the ride. This is the first time I've ever had to do anything like this, so it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride until we can get there. I'm not going to try and be gimmicky and just hunt for thirsty views and do stupid videos. So I want to be real. I'm getting old, man. I'm 30 years old. I'm not trying to hunt for, 18, 19, 14-year-olds who are just interested in dumb stuff. I want people who are wanting to, intellectually challenge themselves and just consume information and just ponder that information, because that's what I'm trying to do. You always have to be learning. You always have to be on. And with that, we're going to leave you guys for tonight. See you Friday morning. Bye-bye.